Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today it's a bit of a weird video, but very informative and helpful. So I was chatting with a student, someone that applied for a free consultation call, and we basically discussed about the things that you are learning and a few takeaways. All the things that you are learning right now, they're important. The problem is that Udemy, Coursera, Codecademy, Free Code Camp, they are not really putting in perspective what you have to do. So, or why we are doing certain things in a certain way. So, my hope with this video is that things will be a bit more clear for you. And if you have any questions, just DM me or apply for a free consultation call if you are seeing this on YouTube. And I'll be more than happy to help you have a similar breakthrough as well. At the end of the day, the worst thing that could happen, in my opinion, is to stay stuck in tutorial hell for months, if not years. Unfortunately, this is the way coding has been, it's being taught online. There's no feedback, there is no nuance to anything that you're doing. Anyway, enough with the ramble. If you need my help, DM me if you are seeing this on Instagram or Facebook, or apply for a free consultation call if you are seeing this on YouTube. See you.
Because I started back in August. I started with the Coursera platform, and then I added on to it the free Codecamp platform, and I added on as well Codecademy and Udemy. So I've been approaching the task of studying with the idea that no one single platform is going to have everything that I need. That I should possibly jump between different platforms and see what they have and get as diverse of an exposure as I can get. One of the big problems, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the platforms, they tend to focus on code along, which, okay, fine, but I'm not generating the idea or the code myself. I'm not exercising that part of the skill set. I'm more in those situations just watching what somebody else is doing and copying, almost like I'm transcribing. That might be good for kind of rote memorization approach to learning, but it's not so great to production. It's not so great to a production side of things, actually producing it myself. And the closest way I can think of to giving an analogy for it would be language teaching. I can give my students example sentences all day long and listen to them, repeat them all day long. But then when it comes to asking them to break down those individual words and creatively produce something new out of those words, there is like a wall that they hit, and it's somewhat of a wall that I hit a little bit. If I sit down and look at the text editor and think about what I want to build, I get a little bit of a wall right there, almost like what a painter would have when they're staring at a white canvas.
Can I tell you? Yeah, I understand 100% what you're saying. And I'm going to tell you what's wrong with that. You are starting with a code editor. What do you think I mean by that?
That I'm trying to code without a purpose. That's the problem.
There is a famous quote that says, solve the problem, then write the code. I don't know how many of my videos or my articles or whatever have you read, but I always say your code is just a tool. If I give you a hammer and you don't have the nail, what you going to do with a hammer? Or if you don't have a painting that needs to be hung, the hammer is worthless. The biggest problem is that if you're by yourself, you need to be a developer. No, you need to be a junior developer, a senior developer, a designer, a UX designer, a project manager, an entrepreneur, 6 jobs, right? You need to come up with the idea, you need to design it, you need to write the code, then you need to make sure that the code works. Am I speaking your language right now?
Yes, very much so.
Can I ask you, like, can you give me an example of an application?
An example of an application that I've done?
An application that you are using right now in the browser. For example, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, those are applications.
I have Facebook open right now.
That application is made by a bunch of other small applications. Can you identify an application that runs inside Facebook?
The chat box
That's
is one.
An application. Yeah.
That's separate from the timeline then, right?
Exactly. Can you give me an example of another application?
The recommendation, the friends recommendation, and the notifications drop down.
If you're looking at that notification drop down, what do you see there?
To describe it this way, it looks like it's a history of different events that occurred in Facebook.
Yeah, okay. So that's like the civilian way of saying I see an array of items. Do you know what's an array?
So
Do you
That's
know
in
what's
fact an array. That's in fact an array all the way through.
yeah? Can you see another array?
If that drop-down list is an array,
Yeah.
is the feed,
Yeah.
is that in fact an array as well?
Can you see another array?
Does that extend all the way to all the comments?
Yep.
Would the comments be an array as well?
Yep. Can you see
So
another
these are
array
all arrays that are being
rendered on the screen?
the list of people who I can chat with in Messenger.
Yep. How do you feel right now?
Curious, I think.
Curious. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, in fact, everything that you're looking at, it's an array, an object. Can you give me an example of an object?
The window object, the entire
That's
screen is built
I'm
into a
talking
window
about
object, right?
I'm talking about data object.
A data object.
It's everywhere. Just try to pick one. Maybe a person that commented on a post. Is that an object? Because you have the first name, last name, a picture, and some text that can be described as an object now. And if that comment has replies, it can have an array of replies. And in there can be more
That's stored
people.
as an object.
So a comment, it's an object in an array of comments, but a comment can have an array of replies filled with other people that left a reply.
And those replies are objects themselves.
Yeah.
The name and the image.
Yeah.
And
the reply,
timestamp.
the text, yeah, and the timestamp, yeah, and the amount of likes they have.
So if I look at a Facebook post, if I'm looking at a Facebook post and I'm looking at a comment feed, I can just grab this Codecademy one right here. The entire feed is an array. The whole timeline is an array.
Yep.
The post itself is an object inside that.
Yeah.
And nested within inside that object is a name, two names, the name of the poster, the name of the destination, the picture, the timestamp, the text, images if they're there, and then a whole nother array of objects for the comments, which are themselves objects nested inside.
Yeah.
Okay, I now I understand. Now I see what you're talking about. I've never had anybody ask me to look at Facebook that way.
Yeah, because no one is teaching programming the way I do it. I always try to reverse engineer things, you know. I always try to show you what you can do with it. And I want to show you that the things that you are learning are in fact used, because my biggest problem was the fact that I never ever understood why we are actually learning these freaking arrays, these functions, these booleans. Like, what's the purpose of all these things together, you know? Like, why are we bothering with this, you know? That was my biggest problem. So now I'm trying to solve this problem first and then work my way towards getting a job, you know? So this is my approach to how I think about programming, you know? Your problem basically is like, what am I going to do with all this stuff, right?
Yes, that's also one of the questions, one of the things you said a few minutes ago about why are we learning all this stuff is something that I've actually had pop up a few different times until you asked me to think about Facebook in terms of arrays and objects. So that was a question that I had in the past, like, why would I use this? Why would I use this object, or what can I do with this object? Yeah, I do have a couple. That's a question that I have about a couple other different structures that exist in both JavaScript and Python, and that's the classes. Why, in what situation what would I use a class for? What would I do with that? So now that you know that Facebook is an object, what would you do with a class? Like, not Facebook is an object, but now you identified a few things. Why would you use a class? Or what is a class? Well, a class comes across to me as like kind of container where you can store a whole lot of different functions that you can then call on that class. Are you talking about JavaScript classes or Python classes? I've seen the Python classes, and I'm aware that they exist in JavaScript. I don't know what the differences are between the two of them. So classes are basically functions in JavaScript. They are functions that are creating objects. So I can basically create a class that has a certain configuration, and I can use that class to create posts, let's say, or I can create chat windows with it. Whenever I click on your head in the chat, I'm creating a new instance of a chat, and that instance of a chat has data like my messages and your messages. And it has a few functions, for example, sending a message or closing the chat window or giving you the thumbs up button. Sorry, I was chilling. Or it has the method of sending you a picture, or it has the method of sending you an audio note. That's a class, because you are seeing a nice design and all that stuff, and you forget to see the data structures that are operating behind, you know. I'm not just looking at a large object like what I would see in a JSON file. I'm looking at instance of a class, an array of class instances.
It's a bit more complicated than that, and I don't know if that's correct, but I'm giving you examples, brainstorming with you so you can see where you would actually use these things, like see beyond the design and the CSS and the HTML, because we as developers, usually, I don't want to say that it's only like this, but usually we start with the data, how the data, actually no, we get a design, let's say, an idea of what we want to build, and then we developers go ahead and discuss how the data should look like and different behaviors and what should happen when the user does this and that, how would we store the data and other kind of things. But we usually start with how the data looks like and we match that to the design,